Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Boomtown, written by Russell T Davies and directed by Joel Ahern. This story was a great little experiment, something that has never been done again in Doctor Who. Again, new series pushing the boundaries of what a Doctor Who story can do. As in usual cases, in the televised series anyway, the Doctor interacts with an event and then he leaves, and it's rare, if ever, do we experience the consequences of this action. It's not completely new. We've had a select stories dealing with this topic. For example, The Face of Evil is a very good example, and a handful of stories here and there which deals with the aftermaths of the Doctor's interaction. But and the Big Finish have loads of stories like this. They've got tons of adventures that deal with the aftermath of a previous story. But this is the first time that not only have we seen it in the TV series in which we see the previous encounter, we've seen it, but not only that, but this story really digs deep about it. It asks us questions, and unlike previous stories in the televised anyway, Big Finish, like I said, have done stuff like this loads of times, but in the previous televised stories which tackle similar themes, it's usually just a way to set up the story. It's usually just, the Doctor has defeated this villain before, and now they come back for revenge. But here we're tackling, it's like, what does it mean for the Doctor to just leave without asking any questions? What does it mean for the people that are left behind, who are, for those who have survived, in a sense? It's also, again, important to note that this story was written extremely quickly, as this story was actually a replacement for a story written by Paul Abbott, who, as of recording this, still hasn't written a Doctor Who story. His story was entitled The Void, and the story would have been about our characters, Rose, Mickey and Jack, discovering that the Doctor has actually been, the word they use is breed up, whatever the hell that means, Rose to be the perfect companion. It turns out like the Doctor has been secretly training her up to be the best companion ever, which was actually why we had that red bicycle when you were 12 little reference back in the previous story. That was supposed to tie into the episode The Void. However, Paul Abbott had other things that he wanted to do and he couldn't make it. So this story was written in a rush like that. It's also the first story, which is... It's not the first story set in Cardiff, but it's the first story filmed in Cardiff and shows a modern-day Cardiff location, which would be very important for Doctor Who, not only because this is from... the new series was done by BBC Cymru or BBC Wales, the Welsh division of BBC that's located, of course, in Cardiff, but also as well this would be an important setting for majorities of stories afterwards, more specifically the Torchwood spin-off, which would also feature Captain Jack. Now, I think watching this story, and obviously knowing a few other stories in a similar vein of this adventure, I get the impression that Russell T Davies isn't a great writer when he's in a rush. I mean, this story, it has a potential. It has great moments, has great things to talk about. It has great things to do, to say, but it doesn't always work, to say the least. When this story came out, back in 2005. I remember that this was one of the few stories in which, like, I think the majority of people enjoyed it. A lot of people liked it. It was a lot more comical than this was. If this is unlike any other story in the series so far, this is the most comical adventure. We have Benny Hill style chase scenes. We have a lot of like visual gags and jokes and funny moments and silly moments. So this one is like the most that the Doctor Who has come to comedy. Though we have had similar elements, like this story reintroduces the Slitheen. This story follows up from the aftermath of the Aliens of London and World War III, as we get reunited with Bon Flen Slitheen from that story, who had survived from her encounter with the Doctor. Very interesting stuff right there. But yeah, it's dealing with a lot of elements and stuff. But I'm just ranting on about. But what was I talking about? I was talking about like the majority of people I find really enjoy this story. They like the funny, the silliness. They like the more upbeat humour. They like Captain Jack in this story, and a lot of the silly little one-liners in this adventure. But I feel like when back in 2005, I felt like a lot of the hardcore fans, the people who like really get into these stories, weren't too keen on it, feeling that it was a weak entry to the series in tackling such a brilliant concept, the aftermath of a Doctor's adventures. So that's the backing of this story. But what is this story actually about? As I stated, it deals with Bon Flen Slitheen, who had survived and has become the mayor of Cardiff, and she has come up with this plan to set a nuclear reactor basically at the heart of Cardiff. And somebody has been investigating it and is like, this reactor is highly dangerous, you have to cancel it. It's like 10 times more dangerous than Chernobyl. And she gets caught out, but quickly kills him in his roots. And we see her then as well talking about her Drathflud project with a bunch of reporters and stuff. Cut to our main characters, we have Mickey Smith reprising, Noel Clarke reprising from his role as Mickey Smith. And he's come to Cardiff to deliver Rose her passport as the TARDIS has landed in the heart of Cardiff. It's really strange seeing Doctor Who not only in a filming location that I have recognised for like almost my entire life, but it's also set there as well. It's not there as like dress setting for another location like Cardiff was for, as Swansea was for Cardiff. But this was Cardiff playing Cardiff. It's really bizarre and it's really strange. And it's here that Mickey gets introduced to Jack and gets reunited with Rose and the Doctor. And there's a lot of what I would consider cheeky banter between our three main leads, the three TARDIS crew. Right off the bat, something is off. Not as in like there's something like strange in the plot, but I mean in terms of like a viewing audience and watching these stories back to back to back to back, something doesn't feel quite right. There's something a bit too happy, a bit too cheerful, and it makes the relationship in this story, at the start anyway, feel really cheesy, feel really sitcom, and feel really fake. A great example is actually Captain Jack. In the previous story, we've had this whole debate on the Doctor having this sort of relationship with Jack of this, maybe like he doesn't trust him all that well. Like Jack is a con man after all, and there was this massive debate between them. Here we never get anything like that. In fact, that that aspect of their relationship that was set up in The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances is never really tackled again. Jack seems like almost a completely different character here. As I stated in that video, it's strange to see Jack in that video, in that story, because when I think of Jack, I think of this person who's clearly has had military training and he gives orders, and he's always like the person who seems like he would take charge. If there's no one in charge, he will take in charge. This is where that root comes from, but it's not like there's a character development. One story, he's a con artist and a self-proclaimed criminal who just enjoys his life and has no worries, no concerns, to all of a sudden being this camp captain, and more in line to what he usually is. In fact, when they discover that Bond Fleet and Savine is alive and is running Cardiff, Jack actually lists as like, right, she's one of the last members of the Slitheen race, the Slitheen family. She is a criminal he's account of murders, blah 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 blah. As if like he was a cop who's like done his like research, and it feels very not as bad. I mean, this is the Jack that we all know and love in later stories, especially like I said in Torchwood. But it's strange how Jack from the gas mask zombie two-parter to this story, without any sort of development or shift, it feels like we should have had a few more episodes between the two stories. In fact, chronologically speaking, the Ninth Doctor Titan comics actually take place between these two stories. So maybe, hopefully, those stories tackle the development of Jack becoming the flirty con man to this camp authority leader character. But that's beside the point. I've rambled on about this topic way longer than I anticipated. Right off the bat, Doctor and our crew, the TARDIS crew of four, I mean Mickey counts because he's part of the crew in this story. He's one of the main characters. Quickly find Bond Fleet and Savine, who in this very comical scene, almost like I said, Benny Hill type of scene in which there's a great moment where the Doctor goes to the secretary and he opens the door, tells her that the Doctor is here. He comes out and he's like, sorry, but she's a bit busy on paperwork. And the Doctor's just like, she's climbing out the window, isn't she? Yeah. And then the Doctor pushes him out. And then we get like a chase scene, and right off the bat we get to see like all of each character. Like Jack handles the run-in really well. He jumps really high over some stuff and gets away and is running like really quick. We have Rose, who kind of bumps into people, but she's still getting there. She's still on the chase. She's still focused. And then we've got Mickey Smith, who just crashes into everything. He's so determined to prove that he is like but he's clumsy. He's silly, and he gets his foot like caught up in a bin, and he's chasing a Slitheen. And then we've got another comical scene of Bond Fleet teleporting out, and the Doctor, being good at teleports apparently, teleports her back to Cardiff, and there's like a routine there. Now, let's talk about the humour in this story, because this story has a lot of humorous moments. 9 out of 10, it does not work. Now, don't get me wrong, like most of it is our visual humour, and Joe Ahern, he's a fantastic director. Like I said in previous videos talking about him, he's easily a contender for one of the best directors, and he gets some really great directors. Like, he shoots Cardiff absolutely gorgeously. It kind of feels like a little bit fantasy, because when you go to Cardiff in real life, it's really messy, and it's 9 out of 10, it's raining, but Cardiff looks really stunning in here. But the humour in here seems a bit like, I don't know, I'm trying to describe it. It's a little bit too, like, everyone's so cheerful and smiling, and it kind of has that like loose feel about it. But in a way where we struggle to it just seems like a gag after gag after gag without really much of a focus. There's also some really weird moments which I didn't think about when I first watched the story, but then watching back I'm like, hold on, huh? What? A great example is during actually that chase, the secretary, after the doctor gets through the window and sees Bonflen Slitheen going some railings and stuff, the secretary just then suddenly just starts grabbing the doctor and is like, get off, stay away from the mayor, what are you doing? And it's just like, what? Like, why, how the hell, like, what? Just, and the weird thing is that the scene never actually focuses on it. Like, was it, the secretary is just all of a sudden like this, like did Margaret hypnotize him? Maybe? I don't know. Also, how the hell is Margaret the mayor of Cardiff? Sure, she is a well-respected person in authority who is who's been ripped out, and the Slitheen has gone in disguised as her. But in the last story she was in, we had Harriet Jones, who had become who at the end is stated as becoming the Prime Minister. She knows about Margaret being Flonflen Slitheen. She knows that it is an alien creature inside a human body. How does she not pick up on this? And how isn't she like, hold on, that's the alien creature that tried to destroy London like all those months ago. Also, this story is set in 2006. Keep that in mind. But the humour, it's so strange, because every time it tackles the humour, I feel like 9 out of 10 it fails. But there are some serious moments, and when Joel Ahern gets some serious moments, he really knows how to take advantage of it. A great example is this secretary who she questions Margaret about the draft fluid project, and Margaret is trying to ignore the questions and stuff until she realizes, like, right, this woman is dangerous, she could leak some information, so right, she's gonna die. So she takes her to the toilet, you know, Slitheen's farting and all that, and she gets out of his skin and she's ready to kill, when all of a sudden this girl announced that, says that she has a boyfriend, and they're getting married. They weren't planning, they were thinking about getting married later, but her mother wanted to get her married earlier, and especially now that there's a baby on the way. And in the scene where Bonflen Slitheen just sits down and she's talking about like her family, and it's like, there's no one left now except for me. I used to have loads of brothers, but they're all gone now. And she actually spares her, she actually lets her go, and you just see her in the Slitheen actual appeal, which is just so well put together. Just puts her head down and closes her eyes and like moans to herself, and that is such powerful scenes. When this story is taking itself seriously, it is actually some of the best drama in the series, at least in this season. Maybe just in terms of like the best scenes, it has some just under Father's Day, maybe, and the ending of Dalek so far. But yeah, My issue is that these very serious moments are so few and far between, and usually most of the story is actually a silly farce. And I don't want to take anything away from Joel Ahern, because, you know, I think he did the best job he can with this story. However, there isn't a lot he can work with in this adventure. There are stuff in this which I feel like no director could take that. He can only go so far with the material he's working with, like the Benny Hill stuff. That, you know, the idea of just a Benny Hill chase scene with this concept in Cardiff in this very mundane setting for Doctor Who comes off as incredibly cartoonish and cheesy, and I don't think any director could have pulled that off. We get some nice scenes then with the Doctor talking to Bond Fledsley, and basically works out her plan on using this board, and when destroying the thing, it creates a thing that borders onto the rift. Oh, I forgot to mention, this story introduces the idea of the rift. After the events of the Unquiet Dead, the rift was sealed, but it's still sort of there. It's absolutely harmless to humans, but for the TARDIS, it's a great power source. So the TARDIS now lands in Cardiff and powers it up for a little bit as it charges, which is why Cardiff becomes such a big setting in later Doctor Who stories. But anyway, the Doctor and Rose and stuff, they're like, right, we caught you, and Rose has a silly moment where she's trying to pronounce the planet of the Slovene, Raxophocorifus Falabatorius. I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry, I'm just terrible with pronunciations. Until Bond Fledsley announces that, like, she has the death sentence. If you take me back to my home planet, I'm going to die. And basically that's the emotional grip of our story is, can the Doctor take her back and let her die? And, you know, when we tackle those elements, it's really strong, it's really fine, but those scenes are so far in between. It's also here where the Doctor notices the project name, Drathfluid, which is Welsh for bad wolf. And it's here where our characters are actually acknowledging the bad wolf meme. Rose mentions, it's like, wait, I've heard that hundreds of times, and the Doctor is puzzled until he snaps out of it and is like, oh, it's nothing, it's probably just some, it's like a radio song getting stuck in your head and then you hear it everywhere. Sort of that. I like that, like, this is like the penultimate story. This is just before the finale story. I like it's brought up here because in previous adventures it's just sort of, it's like in the background, it's mentioned once and nobody brings it up, which is the way I prefer it. But you do kind of need at least one scene of them bringing it up. And I like the Doctor's mentioning how, you know, it's just like, oh, it's just some silly like mind tricks of it. I like the little that, because it doesn't distract from this story, unlike previous, or should I say, future story arcs. Yeah, it's really weird because I'm talking this story retroactively. It's very bizarre. Like, there's a lot of, like, the problem with this story is that when it's focused, when it's talking about what it needs to talk about, it is good. It is really good. But it's distracted as hell, and, you know, you can't really just talk about scenes in which, you know, they're just joking, light moments and stuff. Well, I can. I'm doing it right now. But the way I'm describing it probably sounds like it's a lot more better than I think it's intended. So, you know, I don't want to be like really negative towards this story, but it's mainly a pacing issue. A lot of the scenes just go really nowhere, and a lot of the dialogue is very fluffy, very doesn't really grab you, but there are scenes, they're small, but they're really great scenes of grabbing the attention. For example, when they take Bond, Fen, Slitheen and the TARDIS, she gives this speech about how would, if you just sent me to my death without any sort of conscience, then how are you better than me? How are you better than me, a killer who kills for profit and stuff, and then you're just killing to, you know, get me out of the way. And then there's a great moment, which again shows Joel Ahern. Joel Ahern's directing really makes the serious scenes stand out, in which he basically is like, right, after telling them all this, after explaining this to them, who can look me in the eye? And then we get like a minute of silence as she just stares at each character one at a time. Mickey tries to stare at her but fails. Rose kind of gets this, like, you can see her in her face, she's kind of like, no, I can't, damn thing. Jack, again, tries. The Doctor doesn't even, like, look at first, and then he gives her, like, a little glimpse and then looks back, as if, like, he's saying to himself, like, right, I'm not playing this game. And then he looks up as if to go, but I am curious as to if I can do it. And, like, right off the bat, he's like, no, I can't. That, like, it's just a small second. It's just literally Christopher Eccleston doing this. And that's all you need. And that, Joel Ahern and Christopher Eccleston are just such a great, fantastic pairing. I wish we had more stories where Joel Ahern is directing Christopher Eccleston. Joel Ahern, come back to direct a Chris Chibnall story, please. I beg of you. I'd love you to return. Anyway, again, there's a lot of fluff, there's a lot of silly stuff, but when again it tackles seriously, as we get the famous scene, the scene in which this story gets a lot of praise for, and rightfully so, the dinner scene. Basically, speaking of like fluff scenes, Bond Flen Slitheen explains how she survived, and we get this really underlining moment, in my opinion, in which she explains that she used a single person teleporter and she landed in some bins, and the Doctor laughs about it. And it's a funny scene, don't get me wrong, but it does take away from the emotional impact of the story we're telling now. And so she grants one last request to go out on a dinner, and originally the character's like, no chance, she'll escape as soon as she sees a chance, before Jack reveals that he has these handcuffs that if separated for far too long, then Bond gets a massive zap, electrocuted. And so the Doctor takes her out to dinner, and it starts off playing it silly as you expect, but here the humour works really well, because our characters, though they do have this slight little silly play to it, are taking it extremely seriously, where Bond is trying to kill the Doctor. She puts poison in his drink whilst he's not looking, but the Doctor switches the drinks as soon as he turns back. She shoots a poison dart in her finger, but the Doctor captures it straight away. There's a bit where she tries to exhale poison from her lungs, but the Doctor gives her spray in her mouth, and the Doctor's like, now what do you fancy? Steak. Steaks and chips. But then the scene is intercut with this and a scene with Rose and Mickey, in which it starts off. These two scenes are actually paced very well, in my opinion, because they both start off really silly, very light, but then when we cut back to each other, it gets a little bit more and more serious of each other. From Mickey and Rose's one, I'll just tackle the Mickey and Rose one to get out of the way. Rose starts off like just bantering about how amazing her travels with the Doctor is and all of these adventures that we don't actually see. So clearly there are more adventures to tell with Rose and the Ninth Doctor from an extended media point of view. And Mickey is like listening and he's kind of zoning out a little bit, and then he just comes out and says that he's been dating one of their friends, the butcher's girl. I can't remember. Trisha Delaney, I think the name was. And Rose is originally like, oh, okay, so well done. And then the scenes get more and more intense as we cut into it, as Rose is like, how dare you? You don't even like her. And Mickey announces like, right, I can't just. You left me, Rose. You went off. You treated me like crap, and run off with this, with the doctor leaving me on Earth, and I had to like get on without you. And then and Rose originally kicks off and it's like, so this isn't about her at all. This is about me. And Mickey gets up and is like, I don't know if you can come back for me, or you're just coming back because, the TARDIS just lands. And I have no guarantee. My life's got to continue. And you treated me like hell. I felt like rubbish when you left. And he's absolutely in the right. And the scene is directed very well. As the scene gets more and more intense, we get closer and closer into the action, and it's paced very well, and the acting is just phenomenal here. But it's a massive issue, and I think this is clearly pinned down to Russell T Davies, because he loves Rose. He absolutely loves Rose, to the point where this scene should have been sort of her wake-up call. Or it's like, right, this is Mickey, I have treated like Mickey, like terrible, But no, the story tries to make us sympathise with Rose as if she is the one in the right. But Mickey has been treated like rubbish. He has been abandoned by her in some way. And despite him not even knowing, she's kind of had a flirty relationship with Adam. And again, with Captain Jack Harkness. Mickey is completely in the right, but the story wants to act like Rose is somehow innocent in all this. No, don't buy it. And it's such a painful experience, because with a much better character, with a much better motivation, this scene would have been perfect. It's well handled, directed wise and stuff, but the character of Rose, especially in this story, how she just doesn't see why Mickey would even consider this. She just is she does kind of just see Mickey as we're on Earth, I may as well call it Mickey and thing, as if he's a spare in a sense. That's how Mickey gets treated, and it is kind of disgusting. The story does kind of end. When the story ends, does kind of have Mickey deserves better, and it's nice that she does kind of realise in a sense. But this aspect of the character never brought up again. When next time we see Mickey, it's never mentioned. This argument is never mentioned. She learns nothing, and it's a really painful experience. Especially if you even are invested in Rose, this is a very annoying experience, because this is a scene in which the character could grow. She could learn. She can be like, right, yes, Mickey, I did treat you horribly, but no, Russell T Davies won't put Rose in a negative light, and it's such a weak entry in terms of the plot. Greatly directed, greatly acted. I just think the writing, or at least the characters that were given are very weak. But let's talk about something I really do like, and that's going back to the cafe scene. The next time we cut into it, Bornflet is trying to beg the doctor to spare her, and the scene actually takes itself a lot more serious. There's no more farting, there's no more Bond trying to kill and stuff. They're just talking, and the doctor is mainly just listening in this, and he's just kind of curious about her. You can see it in his face, and she's begging to be spared, and the doctor's like, it's not really my problem, but I don't make the law. But then Bond is like, but you're enforcing the law. You're saying that this is right because you are going with this law. So, it's kind of messed up. She also then goes into detail about the girl she spared earlier on in the episode. And the doctor's like, don't worry, I believe you. But that's nothing new. And it's great scene because, like I said, the scene gets closer and closer to the acting, to the action. It's a usual shot, reverse shot aspect, but the scene gets closer and closer, especially when we get more and more intrigued. In fact, when the doctor's talking about this whole how killers and murderers, how they justify murdering billions because once in a while, maybe they cried, maybe he had freckles, maybe he pleaded, but once in a while you spare people. That's how you kill millions. The scene is shot fantastic. It's shot like with their head and their necks in frame, like literally like really close up, but there, and it's still in a comfortable position. It feels like we're listening in. We are invested. We feel like we're part of the conversation in that sense. And then Bon Flenslavine mentions that only another killer would know that sparing someone is how they justify killing millions of others. And when it does that, the close-ups become uncomfortably close in a good way. Like literally, like the chins and the top of their foreheads get cut off from the frame. So that like the camera's like really uncomfortably close into Bon and the Doctor, basically implying that we are getting into such personal territory that it's making it really uncomfortable for our characters. We're tackling subjects which really none of them want to talk about, but Bon and Doctor have basically put themselves in a situation where this discussion needs to be had, and it is just a massive piece of great directing, great acting, great performances, great writing. That little bit is so good, and it's completely ruined by literally the next moment, as it turns out that Jack has been plugging the surfboard she was planning to try and charge up the TARDIS a little bit, only to turn out that Bond has put out a defense mechanism in which it detaches itself to the nearest power source and opens up the rift to try to destroy Cardiff. And it turns out that basically she was lying all along, or at least she said all those things. She didn't mean it. She didn't mean it contently. She just meant it to distract the Doctor, to be just to distract him from her main goal of destroying and killing everybody in Cardiff. She hasn't learned anything, and that is just such an annoying, as somebody who was invested in the scene previously, because it's literally like the next scene. How the characters, how she just all of a sudden is like, no, haha, I was playing for time all along. I didn't mean all those things. Now I have Rose, and I'm going to snap her neck unless you do what I say. Ha 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 ha. And as well, the ending, in my opinion, just outright sucks. Throughout the story, we've had this great dilemma whether the Doctor should take Bon Flenslavine back to her planet to be executed, or whether he should, spare her life to set her free, knowing that she was going to go off and kill millions of other people. Still, at least he believes that there's a high chance that she wants change, which this scene kind of proves. And the dynamic, the confrontation between the Doctor and himself is a very great dramatic experience in the story. But the ending is a massive cop-out in that, as Bon is basically ripping the TARDIS apart. She opens up the heart of the TARDIS, making its first full appearance in a story, which will be important in a handful of stories later on, in which the Doctor is basically like, look at the height of the TARDIS, it's like this magical, amazing thing, look into its soul, and she says, thank you, and she gets reverted back into an egg, as it turns out it's like, right, we can just send her back to her own planet now, put her in a nursery home, and she can like relive her life, and with no consequences. There's no issue now. The decision on whether to bring her back or not and let her be executed or not, they're all taken away from me. There's now only one right answer: just take the egg back to Raxophocorius Fallopatorius. That ruins any emotional grabbing of this story. So there you go. That's Boomtown. Overall, I think there are a lot of great little moments in this, but they're so far and few between, and the majority of the story is just kind of fluff. I feel like this is one of Russell T Davies's weaker scripts, and Joel Ahern, despite being a fantastic director and does his best, and the story still looks absolutely gorgeous, is very weak because it doesn't have a lot to grab onto, because it doesn't have a lot of... Joel Ahern didn't get a lot to work with, I think, in this story. I think you can easily feel that Russell T Davies wrote this script as a replacement for another script, and from what I can tell by my research, by my gathering, that might have been the issue, that Russell T Davies isn't great at writing a script in such short notice. But I could be wrong, I still enjoyed it. I still had a lot of fun with it. I did kind of chuckle with it. I did enjoy those really intense scenes. When scenes are serious, the story really knows what it's doing. The silly moments are silly, you can have a laugh with them, but it takes away from the dramatic experience. It takes away from the narrative, and it's one of those... I consider it a popcorn adventure. If you just want a story to sit back, just relax for half an hour, for an hour, then I say go watch it. You'll have fun, you'll have a blast. But if you're looking for something to really get invested in, something to bite your teeth with, something with a lot of meat on its bone, you're not going to find it here. So there you go, that's Boomtown. So join me next time where the Doctor encounters some old enemies, finds himself in a familiar location, and we have to say goodbye to number 9. So I'll see you next time for Bad Wolf and Parting of the Waves. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!